You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear 2 flatmates, Tom and Richard, discussing the rules of their shared house. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Richard, as we discussed before with this extra bedroom in the house, we should advertise for another tenant, but I think we've got to establish rules this time.
We already have 2 rules about the rent money. Remember? We pay on the 5th and expect full payment with no excuses.
Sure, but I mean additional rules apart from those 2.
The rule is to pay rent money on the 5th, so 5th has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Richard, as we discussed before with this extra bedroom in the house, we should advertise for another tenant, but I think we've got to establish rules this time.
We already have 2 rules about the rent money. Remember? We pay on the 5th and expect full payment with no excuses.
Sure, but I mean additional rules apart from those 2.
Okay, there's certainly no harm in that.
Remember the problems we've had with people in the past. I think we should learn from those bad experiences.
You may have a point there. For example, you know that I like cooking, so I can propose a kitchen rule straight away. Every tenant must clean after use. We shouldn't allow what happened last time.
You mean that guy who left all his dirty dishes piling up and food on the floor? Clean after use. We should write that down. I'm happy with that.
And not only clean, but they also have to tidy up. We can't have them cluttering up our very small kitchen counter.
I'm with you there. That will make life far more manageable. So, tidy up is our second cooking rule, let's say. And now, can I tell you what really annoys me?
Sure.
Dirty tenants. Those who just allow dirt and dust to build up around the house and don't care less. We've got to have a strict rule prohibiting that.
What about a cleaning roster? We can make a list of everything that we expect to be done. Carpets vacuumed, furniture dusted, toilet cleaned, and so on.
And everyone is required to take turns. First my turn, then your turn, then the third tenant's turn. This spreads the load so we can keep the apartment very clean.
I'm happy with that. Otherwise, one person will be working harder than the others. But how often do we do it? Every day, twice a week, or once a week, or what?
Every day. What do you think?
Too often, I would say.
Well, every 3 days then.
I don't know. We're all busy with part-time jobs and study. I'd say that once a week is good enough. It's probably what most households do, anyway.
All right. Let's run with that then. As long as we do clean regularly and well. Okay, are there any other rules? What about music, loud TV, that sort of thing?
I want absolute quiet at night because I go to bed early in order to get up early for my job.
So, why don't we say no noise after, say, 11 at night?
Earlier than that, 10 p.m. That's consistent with most rental properties, and no overnight visitors either.
You're right. That caused a lot of problems when the last tenant brought his drinking buddies in for the night. So we prohibit late night noise and overnight visitors as well.
That sounds good to me.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Okay, Richard. If we want to advertise for an extra tenant for the third bedroom, there's a website with an online form here that we can fill out. That will speed things up.
Good idea. In fact, let's do it now and get it over and done with.
Sure. The first category here is gender. I guess that means we write male or female.
I think I'd prefer a male. He'd fit in with us, one of the boys, something like that.
Sure, but that might limit things, and I'd say a female might be just what this household needs.
Why don't we say any and let fate decide? See who turns up and judge them as they come.
Okay, I'll type any. So now we move on to job. What sort of job do you want them to have?
To me, it doesn't matter. Doctor, lawyer, cleaner, as long as they have a job, of course. Unemployed tenants can be a problem. Just type in must have.
You mean a job?
Yes.
Must. Okay, that's done. Now, how much should we ask them to pay? $180 would be about 1/3 of the total rent.
I'm doing the maths now with a calculator. The figure would be closer to $173.50.
Well, let's round that up to the nearest 5. I'll type in $175 and we can share the extra $1.50.
Done. Now, finally, when can we let the new tenant move in?
Immediately, I'd say. The sooner the better. Type in immediately.
But I'm busy this week with my job, so I'm not in the mood to interview tenants right now. And anyway, we've had just you and me for so long, what does another couple of weeks matter?
So, when would you like the tenant to move in then? 1 week from now? Beginning of the month, March 1st?
Later. Give it another 4 days at least. March the 5th is better for me.
Okay, I'll type that in. It should be fine. Any later than March the 8th and I'll be too busy with my exams. And that's about it.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a representative from Easy Travel Travel Agency explaining to some customers the benefits of her company. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hello everyone. Now you're here because you're interested in travel, right? And you're in the right place. For at Easy Travel we have the best deals for the best locations. We specialise in eco-travel, or holidays designed to get you amongst nature, ignoring the hustle and bustle of big cities. So whether you want to hike in Nepal, as many people do, or follow some jungle paths in the rainforests of Queensland, we can give you the best deal. If you look at our office here, you'll see our overseas consultants. That's for trips overseas, obviously, to Europe, to North America, but primarily for the Asian market, which is generally more popular in this part of the world. Most people like that touch of the Orient, right? But they also like the domestic market, since this country offers its fair share of beautiful natural vistas. What about the deserts, anyone? What about some striking red rock gorges? Then talk to our domestic consultants, who can arrange anything you want. But they deal with the accounts in the morning, so you'll need to talk to them in the afternoon. And remember, our office doesn't open at night, sorry to say. Now, around the outskirts and outer regions of this city, there are many beautiful places that you might not be aware of, and the advantages of these regional locations are many. Mostly by being closer, some of them can be done in a day tour. Yes, it's fast and convenient with none of those long-haul bus trips which often leave you cramped and uncomfortable and stuffing heavy suitcases into luggage racks. But I should tell you about our buses, those that are needed for the somewhat more distant holiday destinations. They definitely do not suffer from those problems I just mentioned. We use the services of the famous Sleek Line Company, whose buses are known as the very best. Yes, they are big, yes, they are comfortable, but what makes them especially different is the personal attendant who accompanies the driver, ready and willing to serve you and ensure that your trip is the very best. So whether it's overseas or local, we can certainly give you what you want. Now, do you have any questions?
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Right, let me orient you to our main Easy Travel office here. On this table right beside us are travel magazines for you to browse through, and on the wall next to that are many more for all parts of the world. Our 4 travel consultants sit over there on the other side of that long counter. That's right, 4 of them, side by side, all serving various regions. Now, let me tell you their specific functions. Firstly, the consultant on the left, next to the plant, is the local tours consultant, serving tours in the immediate vicinity of this city. Next to her is what we call regional tours, targeting the statewide options. Next to her is the interstate tours, and that can involve either buses or planes. In the former case, utilising the Sleek Line bus service, as you know. And finally, next to her in the corner is General Inquiries, which is self-explanatory. If you have questions of a general nature, rather than one relating to specific destinations, you can go there. Now, as I said, we can do international tours, and for that you need our big office, just through that door, the one between those 2 plants. However, if your international tour is in the Asian region, which is generally our most popular option, then we deal with that in a separate room, the one opposite international tours, but not the corner one. Just go through that door on the left, the one next to that cupboard. The door next to that is, in fact, our general office, so please don't go through there. That's reserved for staff members only.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3.
Section 3. You will hear a student, Eric, talking to his lecturer, Miss Harris, about essay writing. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Miss Harris. Here we are talking once again.
Well, I'm always willing to help out wherever possible. Is anything troubling you?
Well, your advice last week about writing summaries was very useful, and I'm using these summaries a lot in order to prepare my final master's thesis.
But you're having problems, right?
Yes, I have a few issues to discuss. Obviously, I want a good essay, and I want to achieve high marks, but I'm not sure on the best way to start.
That's an easy question. Start with a topic, but not one that I necessarily suggest, but one that you want to explore. You will always write better when doing so on a topic you are interested in, not one imposed upon you by others.
Well, I'm interested in management theory.
Then pursue that. However, that alone is far too broad. Break it into various current areas of discussion and relevance. Then look more carefully at one of them. Say, management and cultural differences, or management and motivation, or other aspects, such as the role of salary, group cohesion, or leadership.
I would say I'm interested in group cohesion, that is, how people interact in the workplace.
Well, that's a start, but you can't then just write planlessly without defining exactly what you intend to do within the area you've chosen. You'll have to think of a thesis, and this statement could be of several types.
Such as what?
Oh, you could argue a point, something that you believe in, or discuss an issue, looking at its various perspectives, or critique the opinions of others, pointing out the pitfalls and flaws. The thesis statement will make that very clear because it will say, in simple terms, what you intend to achieve in your essay.
I see. And then I can just begin writing, right?
Wrong.
Huh?
If your essay is going to be clear, it needs to be logical and organised, and this means you'll need an outline. This could be written as a flowchart or spider graph, that is, a series of connected lines. But whatever shape the outline takes, there must be a sense of progress in, more or less, a straight line towards a goal.
And then my essay will be good?
With such progression, definitely, as long as you do achieve everything that you set out to do, as specified in the beginning, okay?
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Well, Ms. Harris, your advice about essay writing all sounds very useful, solid and step by step, so I'll certainly follow that. But can you tell me in more general terms, what constitutes the best essay?
Oh, there are many aspects to consider, but one of the most important is certainly original thinking. The best essays are written by people who think for themselves, and not just copy or imitate established views.
I think I can do that.
But remember, you can't just give a list of unsupported assertions. There needs to be support as well. A chain of logic linking each step in your argument.
Right.
Yet that alone is not enough. Your argument may be logically sound, but is it practically so? For that, you need examples from real life to illustrate your points or subpoints.
I've got lots of examples from my course readings. I suppose I could use them.
But remember, whenever you use an example or facts or figures that are not commonly known, you must give a reference. That's an academic necessity, without which your writing will automatically fail.
So it's necessary to give these, right?
Absolutely. And with that, your essay will be fine. But always ensure that you format it clearly.
What do you mean?
I mean the practical considerations, as written in the University Style Guide, such as leaving appropriate margins, using double spacing, Arial font, and so on. You see, your writing must look good as well as be good.
I can certainly do that.
And finally, related to the previous point, you need to respect the number of words required. Your individual lecturers will give you a word count figure, so follow what they say, making your essay neither too long nor too short. Perhaps 10% either way should be acceptable. 15% was common when I was younger, but it's a lot stricter now, and 20% would be pushing the boundaries just a little too far.
I guess I can do all that. Thanks for your advice.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecturer talking about caves. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 33. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 33.
If there is one natural feature which has long fascinated man, it is caves, those natural underground spaces into which people can enter. No known cave in the world can exist without it being extensively explored, whether it be in remote areas, such as the Clearwater Cave in Borneo, or immensely long and difficult, such as Mammoth Cave in America. Or perhaps the most challenging, those caves below the water table, full with water, in which case the exploration is known as cave diving. Whatever the case, if the caves are known, as complex and difficult as they usually are, they will be explored. The formal name for the study of caves is speleology, and involves many disciplines such as chemistry, geology, biology, and cartography, or the science of making accurate maps, since the largest caves can be hundreds of kilometres long and highly complicated. If the exploration is just for fun, the activity is known as caving. But with the difficulties and dangers involved, the average caver is often involved with one of these speleological sciences. As for the number of caves in the world, research suggests that only a fraction have been found and documented, mostly in the areas in which caving has long been a popular activity, such as in America, France, or Australia. China, for example, has huge areas of limestone bedrock, prime material for cave formation, and logically must contain among the largest number of caves in the world. Yet only few are documented due to the lack of interest in caving there. Thus, as exploration continues, new caves will be discovered, and it is likely that the numbers could radically change in the future.
Before you hear the rest of the lecture, you have some time to look at questions 34 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 34 to 40.
With caves being such mysterious and intriguing places, the obvious question concerns how they form. The most common cause is the effect of slightly acidic water in a process called dissolution. Here, water seeps into the ground and down through rock masses. If this rock is soluble, the water dissolves some of it, and over time, the passage expands to become a cave or cave system. The largest and most common of these involves limestone, although other materials are possible, including gypsum, marble, and even salt. Now, if the cave is formed at the same time as the rock, it is called a primary cave, and the most common of these are lava tubes. When lava from volcanoes flows downhill, the topmost surface cools and solidifies first, leaving the hotter lava to continue to flow beneath. If most of this eventually flows out, a hollow tube is left. The country, Iceland, has some excellent caves of this type, and even far-flung Australia has a few. Finally, there are sea caves, formed from waves pounding into coastal cliffs and eroding into fault lines or softer rock. These caves are usually the shortest, about 50 metres at most, since the erosive action of the waves can only reach a certain distance. However, it is limestone caves which will always be the most interesting. This is due to the presence of limestone formations. As the groundwater seeps downward through the ceiling of the caves, it encounters a different pressure and temperature, causing it to deposit a small amount of its dissolved calcium carbonate. Over time, through the action of millions of drops, this deposition process results in ever-growing masses, known as stalactites, if hanging from the ceiling, or stalagmites, if growing from the floor. Alternatively, the water may flow over a large surface of rock, forming flowstone, and with other sorts of processes, can result in beautiful milky white formations of astonishing complexity. One of the best examples of this, as well as of what surprising discoveries may yet await, is the Lechuguilla Cave in New Mexico. In the 1950s, some cavers heard the sound of wind underneath some large boulders on the cave floor, a clear sign of a deeper passageway. It took until 1984 for a group of cavers to gain permission to start digging, and 2 years later, in 1986, they broke through into a walkable passageway, unlocking one of the longest cave systems in the world, the deepest in America, and some of the most beautiful formations ever found. Unusually, many of these were yellow with sulfur, suggesting that the caves were a result of hydrogen sulfide from nearby oil deposits. This was forced through fracture lines, combining with existing groundwater to form sulfuric acid, dissolving the limestone from the bottom up instead of the normal top-down seepage which characterizes most limestone cave formations.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the real IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer